Five, four, three.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. And what the hell is this? Great. Hide. There we go. Good evening, I said hide. Damn it. Great. Oh, great opening to the show. Good evening and welcome to the Reel McCoy podcast. I'm your host, Mephisto. Usually with me, my good friend, All My Feelings, but he is away for 4th of July, so we'll just start. What is the Reel McCoy? The Reel McCoy is your weekly movie podcast where we ask you to go watch a movie. We watch it, come back to us, and we jump up and down, and we break it all around. With me today to break a movie is Brahma Bull. How you doing, sir?
Pretty good. How are you?
I am as unprofessional as FNT. That's my goal. That's my line. Yeah. All right.
Well, you got through intros in the first few minutes instead of hours, so it's
that's
better
I
than
always do
FNT's
that better.
doing.
I want to get to the meat and potatoes. Yes. So we are doing on the Reel McCoy. We are doing Star Trek month because I just wanna. And yes, I'm aware it's a TNG uniform, and yes, I'm aware most of the Star Treks we will be covering, especially today, is TOS. But it's all good. So I asked our audience to go and watch the movie, not a movie, the movie. Wrath of Khan from Star Trek. Have you watched this in the theaters, Brahma?
Never saw it in the theaters. Watched
Just
it
on
countless
what,
times.
VHS?
Though. VHS. I've got the DVD copies. I catch it on. I mean, I've watched it anytime it's on TV. It's like if you're flipping through and you see this one, it's one of them that I stop on.
Was it the first Star Trek movie that you've seen? Just
no, I
if you
think
remember.
Undiscovered Country was actually the first one I saw, and
Interesting.
then I went back and watched the rest of them. I grew up in the Next Generation era, so that was kind of more my Star Trek.
Actually the first Star Trek anything that I've seen is the motion picture, and even back then I thought it was fucking boring. I rewatched it again and again throughout the years. It's still in parts very, very boring. I'm very thankful that now most of the stuff I watch are like converted from DVD into files. So I just, every time that I get to a boring point, I just press the arrow key and it just goes 10, 20 seconds forward. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I've seen this before. But yes.
Yeah, the motion picture, the first one, yeah, it didn't really do
There
it for
are
me.
lots
I know
of
many original series fans that it did, but for me, it just, it was okay.
Yeah. All right. Before we dive into everything, if you want to interact with me, interact with the show, you can always go to Twitter at Mephisto. You can always go to Instagram if you don't like Twitter at Mephisto79. You can email the show, the Reel McCoy podcast at gmail.com. And of course, our gracious and lovely special guest, you can find Mr. Brahmable on Twitter. But in the description down below, I've linked the YouTube page and, of course, the Rumble page where you do, you don't do the NHL right now, but you do streams about hockey and stuff.
Yeah, Saturday nights, me and that 70s rock fan do bourbon and boarding. So during the NHL season, we break down what happens during the week and show some clips and some fights and just have a good time on Saturday night with something we actually like. So
Nice.
During the off season, we're probably just going to do once a month specials just to keep something out there. But for right now, we're kind of on hiatus through the summer. We'll just throw something together every now and then.
But people can always catch you on the Tuesday. I keep forgetting it, on Comics Division channel.
Comics Division's channel, Monday Night Throwdown, or
Monday
Yelling
Night
at Parked
Throwdown.
Cars, and Thursday Night Throwdown.
See, I always get those things confused. But they're two great shows that people should go and watch and catch you on them as well. And sometimes on the Midweek Hump on Rumble, us two are there for the after show. All right, let's just jump into everything. Say hello to Paul. Paul, thank you, man. Thank you. Can't sit through the first one. It's so boring. Correct, sir. All right, let's just jump into our first segment. It's called Behind the Screens.
Action, take 2.
Behind the Screens is where we break down everything that is going on behind the scenes, how things come together with the movie, and everything. If you have anything that you know, just jump in and we'll just discuss the stuff. First, Gene Roddenberry pitched the script, the original script, in which the Klingons use the Guardian of Forever from the episode The City of the Edge of Forever to stop the assassination of JFK, thus altering the sort of timeline and making sure the humans don't go out to space or something. And Paramount flat out rejected it. First, they didn't want Roddenberry to write anything because he's a slow writer and he's plotting and it's just not fun to work with him. And they just didn't like the way that the motion picture actually come together, and he was heavily involved in that as well. So they were like apprehensive.
Yeah, the motion picture had a lot of issues. Like I think Culture and Tom have talked about it multiple times, but they didn't get the sound reels to the theaters until like day of. They were still wet. So there were many, many issues with the motion picture. They had a deadline. They just barely met it, but they didn't meet it in any, satisfactory way.
They had some issues with like the people they hired to do the whole miniature thing, all the exterior shots and all the stuff that they did was done ham-fisted, and we're gonna get to that as well. But it was real bad, so they just got like a brand new producer. They got Harv Bennett. When Harv Bennett went to Paramount, he was asked 2 questions. By the way, the people in the room was one of the sons of the people that originally did MGM, Michael Eisner, and Jeffrey Katzenberg, which is fun because we know which way those people went. So they asked him 2 questions when they brought him in. It's like, can you do a better movie than the motion picture? And the second question, can you do it in less than fucking $45 million? His answers were very simple. Yes, I can. And I can make 6 movies out of 45 million, which was not true, but it was damn close on this one.
Yeah, because this one it was only what, 12 million, something like
$12
that.
million.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bennett never seen a single episode of Star Trek. However, he went back to the original series and he found an episode where he liked and he thought, well, this is my starting point and I can go on. And that episode is the famous Space Seed. It's season 1, episode 22.
And you know what he liked about it, right?
Yes, the stuff about the eugenics, the stuff about the fact that he is smarter than Kirk, I think.
That and after the motion picture, he thought it needed an actual villain, and he thought that Khan was going to be an actual villain that could, drive the story a little bit more than what motion picture did.
Yeah. When
he was asked to make something better than the motion picture, that's what he thought it needed, was a villain to play off of.
Nice. Because Ricardo Montalban, I'm going to fuck that name up. Ricardo, he had a hit show at the time. It was Fantasy Island. I watched a few episodes when I was a kid on syndication. Sorry. I didn't connect to it, but I knew it was big. Bennett had to work around that shooting schedule with Ricardo because it was very important for. I don't even know who was doing Fantasy Island. Not Paramount. Some other studio did that for some TV. But
I do not remember. Before my time. Before both of our times.
Yeah, before both our times. But he had to work around the thing. However, if you notice, and this is not in my notes, but stuff that I remember, Khan and Kirk don't share a soundstage together. The only time that they're reacting is either the view screen or through communications. So there's no face to face. However, in Space Seed, there's lots of face to face. There's lots of acting across the room and that sort of thing. But they tried to get that feeling without actually being in the room, and it ties into working around everybody's schedule.
Yeah, the two actors were never on set together, I believe. Because Shatner was it T.J. Hooker at the time? Yes. So they both were on hit shows. So they were working around each of the guys' schedules. So Ricardo Montalban and Shatner were never around together, even though they played off the hate of each other pretty well.
Yeah, rather well. Jack B. Swartz, the guy who is named as the only screenplay writer, was responsible to come up with the Kobayashi Maru, which is a Star Trek staple now. And he also did the initial concept of the Genesis Project, but he didn't call it the Genesis Project. He called it the Omega System. Now, why is the Omega System important? There's a later movie, which is some people call it the better Star Trek movie, better than the TNG movies. It's called the Galaxy Quest. And the main kind of driving force, the main MacGuffin in the Galaxy Quest is the device called the Omega 13. And the Omega comes from that.
Yep.
Right. What?
Oh, I was just going to say, the other interesting thing about the writing credits on this one is Roddenberry actually got listed, I believe, as executive consultant rather than producer. So it's based on Star Trek created by Roddenberry, and he was just an executive consultant. They didn't have him do any of the real writing for it at all.
Yes. And if you notice, it's from that point on, all of the Star Trek stuff is instead of saying executive producer Gene Roddenberry, or I think in some of them it does say executive producer, but in most of them it says based on Gene Roddenberry's story, that's their way to give him credit and give him, it's all about the pay at the end of the day. But that's the way they gave him credit without him being actually involved with the story.
Yep.
Right. The decision to kill off Spock was already made. The plans were to kill him at the start of the movie, and doing sort of a Janet Leigh psycho type of thing where you don't expect it. Somehow that fact got leaked and the fans were furious. They were so furious. Some of them actually sent death threats to Harve Bennett, to Jack Swartz. And later on, when Nicholas Meyer, the director, came in, they actually sent him threatening letters and death threats. They were really, really rabid even back then.
Yeah, these leaks actually made it into magazines and newspapers. That's how big of a deal it was that Spock was getting killed off.
Right. When they brought in Nicholas Meyer, the director, he has never seen Star Trek before, but he said it was actually a strength because he didn't come with sort of baggage. And he was the one who came up with the idea of doing a more of a naval Star Trek. His model was Horatio Hornblower. The story of Horatio Hornblower. I don't have the name of the author, but when Gene Roddenberry heard that, he was happy because he always thought of Star Trek as a Horatio Hornblower type of story where they go out and explore the seas. Where was I? Yeah. And Myers did not even know it was on Roddenberry's thing. He just came up with it. When Myers kind of went into doing the script, he actually got in and reworked a lot of the script that Swartz did in about 12 days. And he was unpaid and uncredited as the screenplay writer, but he just didn't mind it. He just wanted to tweak the story. And one of the things he tweaked was actually making Khan, putting it in sort of the Ahab role of Moby Dick, where what he said was, everybody's, even the villain is a hero in his own story. So he always thought about Ahab as the villain in the Moby Dick. Or let me do this again. He always thought that Ahab could have been a great villain, but in Moby Dick, Ahab is the hero. He dies at the end, but he's the hero, and it's like the vengeance story of chasing that whale, which is Kirk.
Yeah, I think Khan has a bookcase at one point in the background, and it's got Moby Dick and a couple other books in the background. It's either Khan does or,
and
but
he
yeah, they're all about revenge.
When he flips on the Genesis device, he actually quotes lines from the ending of the book where Ahab is trying to kill Moby Dick.
Yep.
Nicholas Myers and Ricardo Montalban got along great. On the first day of shooting, they shot a scene, and Montalban was doing like overacting and going crazy, and Myers was like really displeased with that. So he said, "Well, everybody take a break and go to your trailer. I'll be there in a minute." He goes into the trailer and he says, "Ricardo, look, why don't you just turn it down a little bit?" Because, and he quoted Laurence Olivier, and he said, well, Laurence Olivier said, "Never give the audience your 100%. Give them less, because that way you can always like bring it a little bit higher and make a better performance next time." And Ricardo's reaction was, "Oh, you're trying to direct me. Good. I don't know what the hell I'm doing there. I just direct me." Because Montalban was so famous at that point. It was like directors said, just go out there and just do your lines. The directors didn't direct him, and he was looking for somewhere to find, like, I want to enact your vision. He wanted the director's vision rather than his own vision, because he was too afraid to be looked at, oh, it's just the guy from Fantasy Island with a new fancy dress just on a spaceship. He was afraid to. He was such a good actor. He's like, I want this to be distinct from that, and he made it work.
Yeah, it's kind of like, do you want the typecast version of me, or do you want me to do something that you want to see?
Exactly. Because of all the leaks, Myers talked to Leonard Nimoy, and they came up with the whole point in the Kobayashi Maru where Spock dies, like fake dies, in order to throw off the fans. Because they were planning on killing him anyway, they pushed it to the end of the movie, and to confuse the audience, it was like they know about the leaks. It was that famous and all that. They got in, they saw Spock die, but it was just a fake. So everybody was like, oh, they're not going to kill our favorite character. And then the punch came in at the end.
There's a backstage story about that too.
Go ahead.
So Meyer, since he had never, he knew nothing about Star Trek beforehand, on the day that they were filming Spock's actual death, everybody was standing around crying. And he said it wasn't until many, many years later, when he went back and looked at it, that he felt the impact of what he had actually done to the fans.
The crazy thing is, Myers didn't want to work on the search for Spock because he said, we just killed him. We can't just resurrect him. I think that's stupid. He actually said that's stupid back in the day. Later on, when they signed him up for the Undiscovered Country, he said, I was the biggest jerk. And I only thought about myself and how impactful that scene was. I didn't want to ruin my impactful scene, but I was being egotistical.
But it was Nimoy who had asked out, I believe. I mean, he was tired of playing Spock. He wanted to hang up the ears.
Originally, the whole movie was set up for the end of Star Trek, to give it a full-on wrap it with a bow and just not get near it. But it did so well, they actually had to add in that little scene at the end where they could just let it go and not add it at all.
Right.
Right. The original title was The Vengeance of Khan, but at the time, the third installment of Star Wars had the moniker The Revenge of the Jedi, and Fox specifically asked Paramount not to use Vengeance because it's too close to Revenge, and it would confuse the brands. And Paramount actually had to change it. They reluctantly changed it. However, when the Jedi actually fully released, of course, Lucas didn't like Jedi to have a revenge, so they changed it to Return of the Jedi, but it wouldn't have mattered. I don't think The Vengeance of Khan or Wrath of Khan would have made any difference in terms of the movie, or at least the moviegoers.
No, but Wrath.
And the original title, and the original title before the Wrath of Khan was The Undiscovered Country, and it was Myers that was involved with both projects. 60% of the shoot was in the same stage. The bridge of the Enterprise is the same bridge as the Reliant, and it's the same bridge as the Kobayashi Maru, a little bit dressed a little bit differently, but overall it is the same thing. And they reused the space station because it wasn't the space dock that we knew. So the dock station that we saw in the motion picture is flipped on its side, and that's the research station. Mm-hmm. And parts of the Klingons' bridge was also used in the interior shots of the planet down below, but it's just pieces.
Yeah.
The Reliant was supposed to be a Constitution class, but they changed it into the new Miranda class because they thought that the space battles would confuse the audience. Where you see two ships that are kind of look the same, they wanted a distinct sort of visual look to them so the audience can actually see which one is which. And ILM, who was tasked to do the new stuff, because they switched over from a guy called Turnbull. I don't remember his first name. He did the motion picture. They went to ILM, and ILM really disliked working with the Constitution class and the way they hang it with strings and everything. They liked the Miranda class, but it's because it was easier to maneuver and do the shots with.
More balanced on the strings.
Yeah, it helped. It just helped them not mess with it too much. Lucasfilm funded the first group of CGI programmers that did the Genesis effect. That's basically the first CGI we see in movies that are CGI as we came to know it. Part of that group split off and were the core starting members of the Pixar studios that used to exist. Now they kind of don't.
Back when Pixar was good.
Yeah. Paramount wanted to distance themselves from the motion picture, so they told Jerry Goldsmith they don't want to work with him. They flat out said, "We don't want to work with you." Nicholas Myers was the one that suggested James Horner. James Horner came from the Corman School of Movies, Roger Corman, and he did loads of these low budget movies, but they were all sci-fi related. And he actually worked in one of those movies with James Cameron, and James Cameron later took him to do Aliens and Avatar and do the whole thing. He was 28 when he did Wrath of Khan, which is arguably very young at the time. And he didn't change the main theme, but he added two themes that are distinctly like the Enterprise theme and the Khan Reliant theme. So every time it switches in the battle between the two, you would hear like a audio cue that oh, this is the bad guys, this is the good guys. And we mentioned this $12 million budget. It grossed 97 million in the box office, which is lower than the motion picture, but the motion picture spent 46 million to get 140. So it was much more profitable. So Paramount was very pleased. And the last scene with the torpedo, like I said, it's a late change. Not in order to open up the next sort of like a reminder, but it was used as a tipping point to sell the next movie. And that is about it.
And I think the other thing that they added there at the end, outside of the torpedo scene, was Spock doing the mind meld with
yes,
with
exactly.
McCoy.
Yeah. Let me get to there. So we start off the movie, and there's this tiny little tidbit we'll get to. There's a few little points there, but I'll mention them as we go along. We start off with arguably one of the most famous scenes, or one of the most famous items in the Star Trek universe, which is the Kobayashi Maru. Let me just do a full...
Yeah, one of the most important pieces of Star Trek lore.
Is this. And they go through the whole scene. We got Kirstie Alley, which she was supposed to be Saavik in all three of them, but she wanted more money and they didn't want to pay her more money, so they kind of shit-canned her. But that's more the search for Spock. But we get to see this. We get to see Spock basically dying, but not really. And we'll also get introduced to the new uniform, right?
Yeah.
The new kind of red. And that also came from Nicholas Myers, where he said the beige kind of bland stuff that we had in the motion picture was not really good. And he wanted to have sort of a distinct hierarchy, like in a vessel in in the 16 and 1700s. So they had this whole set made up, and the ranks are like on the side, which was changed later on in TNG, where they had the little buttons
On
on
the
the
neck.
collar, but make it a sleek sort of thing. And this one is, and they kept this uniform throughout the movies, even though in Search for Spock, because they're being renegades, they have sort of a civilian clothing rather than full on attire. But it is there. I
Yeah.
truly didn't like it when I saw it for the very first time. I didn't quite like it, but I came from the whole TNG era, where I knew the blue, yellow, and red kind of thing, and it
Yeah.
kind of bothered me. But it is what it is.
Nowadays, it just looks a little bit dated because of the style from when the movie was made, early 80s. I think this
Yeah,
one was 82, right? So
this one was 82, but I saw it
they
way
borrowed a lot
later.
from the style. Yeah.
I literally like when I mentioned TNG, I literally saw TNG episodes on VHS, like the Farpoint. It was marketed, and my parents brought it to me, marketed as a movie, not really a start of the series. And I only knew it was a series like in the start of the 90s. Like, this is a series? I saw this as a movie. Because
And I
it looked kind of weird because it looked like a TV-ish, but it was very long, so I guess it's a movie.
yeah, with the Next Generation, I didn't catch the first couple seasons as they aired, but I caught them, sporadically. So then after like season 3 or 4, then it became like appointment viewing every week, one of those type of shows for us. So
Yeah.
I didn't catch the early stuff in order, but from then on I kind of caught all of it, and then it got syndicated and
Yeah,
got to watch it every day at like 4 o'clock when I got home from school.
I saw it in syndication. For us, it was magical Fridays for me, because it was literally Friday afternoons was an episode of TNG ended, Batman the animated series.
Okay.
Could you imagine what a great childhood? What a great childhood. But yeah, one of the things they actually changed and made it better, for at least for me, is Nicholas Myers. Even though he wasn't a fan of or he didn't even see the original series, was inject the humor and the sort of silly banter, or not even silly, but the banter between Kirk and Spock. And of course, you got the triangle of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, where you had Kirk and Spock have their thing, McCoy and Spock have their thing, Kirk and McCoy have their thing, and they all, when they're all in the scene together, they all have that very sort of now it's well established because we know about it, but a very interesting dynamic of how they work. McCoy is the curmudgeon. Kirk is the courageous captain, but he's sometimes a bit too aggressive. And Spock is the more reserved and thought out person. And that kind of works together with all of them. Weirdly enough, it just works. But in this scene, it was like they coming out and they're discussing the fact that Kirk's basically cheated. That's the most important thing.
Did cheat.
He did cheat.
Yeah.
Another thing that is the first with this movie, and like I said, Kirk and McCoy do have their sort of thing. They're both old humans rather than the Vulcan in the way. Did you know that the first time Romulan ale was shown on screen was this actual scene. So they discussed Romulan ale before in the TOS, but it was never shown, never drunk. I think it was one of the episodes where Scotty kind of mentioned it, the whole green drink. And it was later on in TNG, there's that Dyson Sphere episode where they talk about a green drink as well. He has it as well. But this is the first time where we see Romulan ale. They also mentioned that it is quite illegal and it is blue. This was the first time. And they talk about getting old. He gets him, like, he buys him glasses. And Kirk is like, glasses? Really? In the 2200s? You would think he would get a LASIK or something.
Well, and McCoy says something like, I would normally prescribe such and such to fix your eyes at your age. And Kirk says, but I'm allergic to that. And McCoy's like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'm your doctor, Jim.
And they have a big, seems like a throwaway line at the time where McCoy's like, you wouldn't believe how hard it is to find these with the lenses intact.
Yeah. And he opens up the case and looks at it and it's like, yeah. The whole point is we're getting too old for this shit without saying we're getting too old for this shit, and kind of brings back to the theme of, they kind of wanted to wrap things up with this movie. They didn't expect this movie to be the first of a trilogy, basically. And then, of course, we see it goes off to the Reliant. We see Captain. It's I don't remember the first name. It's Winfield. He's the captain, and Chekhov is serving on the Reliant with him. And they go to find a planet to use for the Genesis project. And they think they're on Ceti Alpha 6. They're actually in Ceti Alpha 5. But they don't know it yet. And they go out down to the planet and they find this. It's like the SS Botany Bay. And
Botany Bay?
Yeah. It's like Botany Bay. Oh no. The thing
we have to get out of here.
The thing is, Chekhov was, at the time of Space Seed, was not a part of the crew officially. He was there only in season 2. And I think he was there for the first episode, but they don't talk to him. He doesn't have any role. He was just there in the background. And maybe 2-3 episodes after that, he had a speaking line, and he actually kind of introduces himself as Pavel Chekhov. Yeah. And so what do you think? Is it stories that he heard on the Enterprise about the Botany Bay, or was he a part of the original crew, but he was not there? Because
I think even Koenig has said that, on the set, he said, I wasn't there. So, this doesn't work. And Meyer basically was like, yeah, we're going to go with it anyway. That they had already written themselves into that mistake. But I think, we never see the Enterprise return, so maybe he was just an ensign that was somewhere not on the bridge at the time. Maybe he was there on the ship during that, but he could be part of the crew that eventually got moved up into bridge crew.
The fan theory I've seen in there's so many fan sites, and some of the fan sites is like, well, just like in season 2 where he was not introduced until he was introduced. He was just part of the crew. So either he was there in Space Seed, but we don't see him, or he was when he got onto the Enterprise, the crew kind of talks about what the deeds and stuff that they were doing. However, I'm gonna go with he was a part of the crew in season 1 because they went on a 5-year mission. They didn't return to like a star base to get new crew. It was just their crew from the beginning. So
that's kind of how I feel. He was probably just an ensign in the background, and then got promoted to bridge crew because so many people, on Star Trek beamed down to a planet and somebody's not coming back. So
Yep. The red shirts.
yep.
And of course, we get introduced to Khan, and even if you haven't seen Space Seed, and remember, most people when they saw this movie, they didn't know about Space Seed. So this is their introduction to Khan, and Khan kind of explains everything that you needed to know about himself. He explains the fact that Kirk marooned them on this planet. It was supposed to be lush. I think there's a moment in Space Seed that they talk about, well, we can either kill you or beam you down to a lush planet with animals, and you can just rebuild your eugenic society over here. And in the original episode, he said it's better to die in hell than to serve in heaven. And they said, okay, just beam them down to the planet. But even if you didn't see that, like I said, he gives you the whole rundown. He said that his wife died because of those creatures that get introduced here. Most of
His
his
wife
crew
was
died.
one of the crew of the Enterprise in the episode, right? Isn't she the one that the woman that he's talking about, his wife? Wasn't she one of the original crew of the Enterprise?
She was the one. I think her name was Marley, but I'm not sure. It could be the actress name. Like I said, I'm really bad with names. So his wife was one of the crewmates who woke him up originally. She was attached to McCoy, and she instantly fell in love with him. So she, even when he was kind of choking or asleep or something before they brought him out of the pod, she fell in love with it. She said he's gorgeous and he looks magnificent and that sort of thing. And she was the one who got influenced first by him, by his charisma, by his, let's say, superior intellect. And she opted to go with him to the planet.
Yep.
Let me just put there just to not get fucked with copyright. There we go. There, that's the thing I wanted. Right. People thought that Ricardo Montalban actually wore a sort of rubber foam chest in order to get that physique. But Nicholas Meyer said, this is not fake. This is actually him. He loved to be in shape and, be very fit. He wasn't super muscular, but he had a very fit body, lean, not muscular like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone, but just a regular body, just lean and tone, and he shaved his chest. That's it. Yep. And he did it till he couldn't do it anymore, which is nice. I don't think he reached like 79. He didn't go deep into the 90s. I mean, I can check. I can check right now. Okay, you'll look for it, but I think he's 79. So the whole point is they introduced that creature that kills you, but the side effect is, but up to the point where it kills you, it actually helps release some sort of toxin, and your mind can be melded, not as in Vulcan do, but your mind can be shaped to do whatever you want, and he uses them to take over the Reliant.
Easily influenced. He died in 2009 at the age of 88.
88, so longer than I thought. So yeah, it served him well to be lean and fit. All right, before we continue, we'll jump into our first game of the day. It is called Missing Marquee.
Oh.
Missing Marquee is where we take 10 posters of movies, have their text written off. We display them, and Mrama and the chat will help you. Don't worry. Paul in the chat is really good. 10 posters of movies, and here we go.
Okay.
Just give us your bet.
I know which one it is. Is it is it Troy?
Very famous conqueror.
Yeah, I can picture everything about it.
Has
Come on,
Rosario
Paul.
Dawson in it.
Alexander the Great.
Alexander is correct.
Scanner Darkly.
Scanner Darkly.
No idea.
John Travolta plays a detective, sort of a military detective, and it's about a siege gone bad.
I have no
Not
idea.
General's
Don't think I've
daughter.
ever seen it.
Not the General's daughter. It's the other one where he plays a military detective.
Any help here, Paul? General's daughter is what he said.
It's a different type of situation. This one is Samuel L. Jackson is commanding troops in some sort of a Arabian place. There we go. Basic. Some sort of an Arabian country, and it goes bad, and they maybe shoot women and children, but not really, and they don't know. It's good.
Told you, I'm not good with trivia. I don't know this one either.
Let me see if Paul knows. This is arguably the best movie ever made.
Says it Kane?
That is correct.
Okay.
Although it is not.
Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, or something like that.
Correct.
Foxcatcher. Don't think I've seen this either.
This movie is about collegiate wrestling.
Yep,
I think it's
Paul's help.
I think it's Steve Carell's best movie. And yes, Mark Ruffalo is in this, but he does a good job. I mean, I hate Mark Ruffalo, the person. I do like a lot of stuff that he's in, like Zodiac and the stuff that he did about the DuPont.
Paul says Foxcatcher is the name.
Foxcatcher is correct.
I kind of said that. I read the things on their shirts.
Oh, okay. This one is a stupid movie.
Yeah, you've lost me again on this one.
Was also supposed to be, I think, set up for a trilogy, but it bombed. I'm not gonna wait for Paul because we're gonna
be Ryan Philippe?
It is no, it's not Ryan Philippe. It's called I Am Number 4. There's a very similar poster with a very similar movie with Hayden Christensen called Jumper. The posters look the same.
Okay.
The movies are definitely not the same.
Madagascar?
Madagascar is correct.
No idea on this one. Night of the Living Dead?
No, it's not Night of the Living Dead. This is a long one. It's Night of the Creeps. I'm not going to wait for Paul, but yeah. I'm going to punch him a little bit.
Not sure on this one either.
Throw me your movies that you remember with the Civil War.
With the Civil War, Glory. I know it's not the good, the bad, and the ugly.
It's not Glory. It's not the good, the bad, and the ugly. Nice one, Paul. Thank you. It is North and South.
Okay.
I mean, my first guess when I saw the poster was Gettysburg rather than Glory, because Glory is with Matthew Broderick. But yeah, North and South. I haven't watched that movie.
Well, I got 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah. I had people with the one. Just the one, and it was like a Marvel movie or something.
Yeah,
like, yeah.
I got Scanner Darkly, so
yeah, Scanner Darkly.
I'm pretty proud of that one.
Scanner Darkly is a deep cut. Not a lot of people know that. I like the style of the movie. The movie itself is a little bit here and there.
Yeah,
but I love the artwork of it. The fact that
it's one of those that a lot of people might have seen, but probably still wouldn't remember the name of it or care. I mean, it came across it at some point just because of the weird, almost like rotoscope type.
literally
style.
stars like it has like Keanu Reeves, Winona
Robert Downey
Ryder,
Jr., I think.
RDJ, yeah, and a few others. I haven't
Yeah.
watched it in a while.
Yeah, I think I watched it maybe the one time and that was it. And it was just an
It,
interesting thing to see.
it's sort of a weird one. Sort of a
Yeah.
weird one. Um, so we have we have the situation in the Reliant, and we also have Kirk coming aboard this new refurbished Enterprise. He goes and does an inspection, right? He was not again, he's on board of the Enterprise, but he's not supposed to be the captain. It's supposed to be Spock, but he
Right.
kind of vacates the chairs like, yeah, you're on board, you're the admiral, you should be in the seat. And the weird part is Kirk says to Savick to do like sit in the chair and take them out. Like, okay, he understands that Savick is Spock's protege, and he wants her to get a little bit more of confidence in terms of making sure you know how to steer, you know how to take this out without us being so down in your throat about the whole test.
Yeah.
And
Well,
of
and
course,
this is he's doing the inspection
yes,
as the admiral, and it's a trainee crew. I mean, there's a few
yes,
on there, like Uhura's there, Scotty's there, but it's a crew of trainees, and Spock is taken over as captain.
yeah,
And Spock, before he vacates the chair, tells Shatner or tells Kirk, you know, in his opinion, he shouldn't have ever left the captaincy seat because he was made to be in the stars.
yeah, and kind of mirrors the McCoy, because McCoy kind of said you shouldn't have taken the admiralcy, and they should
Yeah,
no, he said that they shouldn't have taken your chair, which
yeah,
kind of hints to the fact that they kind of forced him into the admiralcy, and it also mirrors a little bit of the storyline that we had in the motion picture where he didn't really want to be the admiral, and he kind of took over Deckard, and and both of his friends were kind of okay with it.
yeah,
And this is something that I couldn't understand at the time, and I still don't. Why did they have her with the training clothes? Maybe because Kirstie Alley was supposed to be hot or something. They were trying to sell her as the next thing. I'm not even sure why they put her in that kind of position.
yeah.
Maybe they
This is
wanted
one of the
Kirk.
few. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Maybe they thought about maybe Kirk having a thing, but it's the only scene where it's kind of sexy. Like I don't know what to
Yeah.
call it.
Well, they originally had thought of her as maybe being a sexier character, and then they kind of cut that and said, "Well, she's a Vulcan."
Yeah,
So, but this is this is one of the worst acted scenes and
yeah,
worst done scenes in the whole movie. Kirstie Alley acts like she's like a little kid in this instead of, one of the trainees to be a captain or a commander. So
because it's weird
it's
because
a
yeah, because she keeps citing the book to him, which is very much in character that a Vulcan would cite the book to the captain. But in this, she asked him like more of a personal question, like, how did you manage to do the thing? And later
yeah,
on, he doesn't explain it to there, but when they go down to the planet, it kind of gets revealed that he was cheating all along.
yeah. She
Uh,
all movie long she wants to know how he got around it because
yeah,
she can't
because
think of a logical explanation for how to get through it.
exactly.
And
Meanwhile,
then they go up and finally the door opens and McCoy's standing there and he's like, "Who's holding up the damn elevator?"
yeah, which is McCoy 101 being the old curmudgeon.
Yeah.
I,
And it's an
in the
elevator instead of a turbo lift at that point.
Yeah, I think they came and they call it a turbo lift only in TNG. I'm not
I think
sure.
so.
Um, So we have the problem with the cutting off the Reliant cutting off the whole space station. I need to move things along, otherwise we'll be here for 3 hours. But the Reliant kind of takes over the research station. Word gets to Starfleet, and they talk to the Enterprise crew and say, you need to check that thing because it's priority number one. And of course,
Well,
they
Dr.
have
Marcus
to.
sends that message that
Yeah.
says, Kirk, why are you taking Genesis away from me? Because they had Chekhov lie and say that Kirk gave the order to take Genesis.
And of course, they have to explain what Genesis is, which comes into the whole CGI bit with which Kirk explained, not him explaining, but him showing to Spock and McCoy this thing, which was classified whatever, B level, A level, black level, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And of course, McCoy, his initial reaction is, they're crazy. What is this thing? And Spock is also not approving of this for some reason. Because it's like, oh, it's fascinating, but it's kind of destructive and not logical. It's like, okay, I guess.
Well, McCoy sees its potential as a weapon, and
Yes.
Spock's basically like, well, it's technology, and it depends on whose hand is holding the weapon. If in that case,
And of course, they rush in to go, and when they reach that point, they face the Reliant, but there's nobody answering them. And of course, like I said, Savick kind of cites the books like when there's another ship and there's a communication, we have to raise the shields. Kirk doesn't want to raise the shields. They get close and they destroy they go straight for engineering. You get the whole point of all of these trainees getting massacred, and one of them, like Scotty, has that point where he brings the little boy that got introduced at the start at the inspection. He brings them that thing. It's like, look what they've done to my boy, kind of scene.
well, it is his nephew, because he says during the inspection, "This is my sister's son. He's eager to get into space."
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
So that's why he's there at the death scene. And that's why he's carrying the body and so proud that he stayed at his position while all the other trainees ran away.
Exactly. And of course, once the big reveal is, we get to see Khan citing lots of lines from Moby Dick. Lots. And it's like, he's like, I'm going to give you, you need to give me Genesis, blah, blah, blah. And Kirk is like, okay, but you need to give me some time. And they stall him in order to get the shield code from the other ship. And they drop their shields in order to fire at the Reliant. But the thing is this, he stands there. He's like, oh, you've got 60 seconds. Like, I need time. And after that, I need your guarantees for you to not like kill the crew. And Khan is like, oh, I give you no guarantees.
Right.
Like, he's so confident in the fact that Kirk is, he can't do anything. It's like, I give you no guarantees. His crew actually urges him to destroy them as soon as possible. And Khan is literally stalling a little bit because he wants Genesis for some reason. They couldn't convey why Khan actually wanted the Genesis. The only reason, I don't think they mention it, but the only reason is the fact that they put him on a lush planet and it got destroyed because there was something wrong with the sun.
The other planet
and it got
exploded
barren
and knocked it out of its orbit. So it
got barren. So they needed a new planet where they can just fire and just start over with the entire thing. It's not mentioned if he wants to hit Earth with it or just some other planet.
Right. But he's far more interested in toying with Kirk before he kills him.
Yes, much more. And of course, they get the code, they drop their shields, and they have a little. They fire at one of the stabilizers, whatever. They didn't destroy the ship, and it's like the crew at this point, his main guy, his like first officer, is like, we need to withdraw because we need to raise our shields back, do some repairs, and then we'll come back and destroy the ship. And Khan really doesn't want to go. He wants the fight. He wants to destroy Kirk, but he knows he's been temporarily defeated. So they go their separate ways, and Kirk goes down. Kirk goes down to the space station. He first, before he goes down, he goes in, and they have that little. Kirk inspects the carnage of all the people in sickbay. By the way, the sickbay is also a redress of something else. I don't remember. It's one of the corridors.
Yeah, there wasn't much to it.
They reused it later in the search for Spock. That sickbay was turned into, I think it was supposed to be like the 10 forward or something.
Okay.
Redressed. They kept all throughout the next like 3 movies, so Search for Spock and Voyage Home, they kept redressing a lot of things. Corridors turned into rooms, worms turned into corridors, that sort of thing, in order to keep the budget as low as humanly possible.
Yeah. It's a good way of doing it.
It's a good way of doing it.
Especially if the whole movie is going to take place basically in the ships.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very little time where they're anywhere else other than the space station and the planet right at the end. The rest of the time, everything takes place on the bridges.
And of course, they go down to the planet. They see the murdered scientists, but they find out about the them beaming down to the planet. So they beam down on a whim. They don't know if there's something there because all their instruments kind of show them that there's nothing there other than a pocket of air. So they beam down to that pocket. They face like Dr. Marcus and the other Dr. Marcus. And then Kirk realizes, yeah, I'm could have killed my son right there and then.
Right.
And of course, kind of realize, oh shit, it's my son. And it's a strange son. They kind of know each other tangentially, but not really. Dr. Marcus is more of let's say, a pacifist rather than militaristic, and Kirk is much more militaristic. So his son didn't grow up in Starfleet. He was more of a scientist, grew up to be more of a scientist himself and more of a pacifist. So he's much more like his mother than his father. Later on in Search for Spock, it kind of is shown that he is really his father's son. But here he's much more of a, we don't want to let them because we don't want this to be used as a weapon. They stress the fact that they don't want it to be used as a weapon.
They also run into Chekhov and the other captain here.
That's where I'm going. Of course, Chekhov and I don't remember the name of it's. I think it's Paul Winfield, but he's the captain. They go down to the planet.
Terrell.
Yeah,
Captain Terrell.
And they go down to the planet. They said, "Well, we need Genesis. Bring it to us." And I think Kirk says no, but they beam the whole project anyways. On a whim, but Khan really wanted to hear Kirk die, but he didn't get the chance. It's like kill Kirk, and the captain couldn't, and he literally killed himself. And then Chekhov couldn't do it as well, but he didn't kill himself. He just collapsed. And then the thing came out of his ear, and Kirk kills it, or incinerates it. Yep. And then Khan is like, he just takes the Genesis thing and he just leaves, or not leaves, but he's kind of waits for Kirk to show up, because it's not really clear what is going on. He just knows Kirk is there, and he knows his crew is going to come back for him. But he's misled because the open communication says like days instead of hours, hours instead of days, because we're going by the book. They just said it openly. We're going by the book. It's going to take like 12 days, or it's going to take 8 days of repairs, and it turns out to be 8 hours.
Well, 2 hours till they beam him up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Savick is like, what was all the talk about days? And he was like, yeah, we went by the book.
Yeah,
I mean, they knew that the communications were being monitored, so they spoke in code. And she didn't catch it, which is kind of weird.
And when Khan kind of leaves, because he's satisfied with, okay, I didn't kill you. You're going to be buried alive down there, because he's not aware of the whole lush garden that was there in the planet, because it reads as a dead planet. He kind of leaves, but he is not leaving. But he left Kirk thinking he left. And we have one of the most famous thing where he says, Khan!
Yeah, my background right now.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, I didn't understand why I yelled at him at first. When I saw this for the very first time, I was like, yeah, he's supposed to leave, but I know he's not leaving. Why is Kirk yelling at Khan? He was literally trying to act like I'm marooned in order to fool Khan. That's my idea. Never said, never mentioned anywhere at all, which is weird, because you would think people would discuss this. Couldn't find any theories about it, why he yelled. I think it was just overacting by Shatner. I don't know. What's
Probably
your take on it?
No, even though I just watched it, I didn't really, I know the scene very well. Everybody knows the scene very well, but I can't remember the things immediately preceding it and immediately after it. They beam up right after, right? So I think
they beam the Genesis.
Explain the ruse.
No, they beam the Genesis. He talks to, he understands that Kirk is not dead.
Right.
Because he's like, oh, your men couldn't kill me. It's like, you need to come here and kill me yourself. They beam the Genesis. It's like, oh, Kirk, I will just leave you marooned like you left me marooned. And he yells.
Then I think what it is he's trying to get him to come back and fight him face to face instead of having him go after the ship. Because there's lines later where he goads him into chasing him into the nebula, and he says, at least he's consistent.
Yeah.
So he knows that he can get him to Kirk can manipulate him a little bit emotionally, and I think he's trying to get him still to come down and face him man to man.
This is where I'm coming from, where he needed that yell in terms of in order to sound desperate, to make sure Khan is focused on that, and the fact that, yes, I've managed to get my vengeance in marooning him on the planet like he marooned me. Then we have that talk between Dr. Marcus and Kirk. It's like how I didn't, I wasn't a part of his life and that sort of thing, while Chekhov is clearly trying to recuperate.
Yep. And
then we have that scene outside in the lush garden where Savick asks again, asks her, you didn't tell me how you beat this thing. And he said, I don't believe in no-win scenario, so I changed the conditions of the test. And she's like, so you cheated, which he did. And of course, I wanted to ask you, you've seen Star Trek 2009. You've seen what
Yes.
J.J. Abrams did with this whole Kobayashi Maru situation because they literally shown Kirk cheat. What do you think? What is your take on it? Let's just say that. Did you like it? You didn't like it?
I only saw it the one time. So the 2009. I
Yeah.
mean, the idea that he would cheat it is very, very Kirk. So, I mean, he was always brash and a little bit, you know, thought a little bit highly of himself, patted himself on the back for things. So, I mean, it fits with the character. Um, the Kobayashi Maru. So basically, it's only those who are going into officer training go through that test, right? And he
Yes.
says it's a test of your character. You're not supposed to be able to get past it. So,
Yes. The whole reason that this test exists, first of all, they made it so Spock wrote the test, which is a little bit off. In
yeah,
the 2009, I mean. It's a
right.
little bit, to me, it was always convoluted. And the fact that Chris Pine, which I actually liked as Kirk,
hmm
did that thing where he just ate an apple and he was so nonchalant. It didn't work for me as a scene. He could have faked not cheating on the test better. Let's just say that. That's my take on that scene. In this point in time, in The Wrath of Khan, you're like, the whole point of Kirk not believing in a no-win scenario kind of serves the third act where they have that big battle scene in the nebula. And the whole Kobayashi Maru test at the start is actually a whole big setup for that space battle where Kirk is down and out. You don't have a warp drive. You don't have anything. You basically don't have any instruments, and you still have to defeat this foe where this foe is technically better than you in terms of, I don't know, intelligence and that sort of thing, and
Mhm.
physical strength, but you have the advantage of being of your time and him
Right.
being at his time. And the fact that you're in a situation where it's very difficult to win. So it's not a no-win scenario, but it's very, very difficult to win. But you have your ingenuity and your brashness, the fact that you're very brash and able to make split-second kind of countermeasures in order to prevail and bring you to that win. And that's Kirk in a nutshell. Defeating the Kobayashi Maru without cheating it is very Kirk-esque.
Yeah. Well, and it even goes in this scene. I think Saavik thinks that they're marooned there. So that's why she's asking the question. And it goes to show that once again, he has rigged everything in his favor because
Yes,
he knows that they're about to be rescued. So he's once again not facing a no-win situation. He's already got the rules, rearranged to where he knows that he's getting out of this. She doesn't.
exactly. And that's the whole point. It seems like it's not there, but it's already pre-planned. So, like I said, he didn't actually cheat here. He went in with a full-on plan. He just didn't divulge it to everybody else in order to come off as much better than it looks,
Yeah,
which
he
is
has more
again
information
very
in his
Kirk.
back pocket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is very Kirk-esque, and that's why. What's your stance, Picard or Kirk?
Oh, I
I'll
grew up
put
with
I'll put
Picard,
away
so
Cisco because I have Cisco was never in that conversation, at least not for
yeah.
me. Is
I
it
I
Kirk?
I love Shatner, but I liked Picard better. I mean, just because I grew up with it, so I saw it a lot earlier than I saw Kirk. But that's just kind of when you're born type thing.
Yeah, to me,
What
for
you
very very
identified as Trek.
yeah, to me it was like Picard all the way. I like the fact that he was very Shakespeareic. I like the fact that he was at one time he was very captain, and the other time he was very like an artist, right? He was very much an
Yeah.
artist. So he's very much like Patrick Stewart. However, when it comes to the business, he was not as brash as Kirk. He was very reserved, and he left the brashness to Riker.
Riker. Yep.
But he was my definitive Star Trek captain for a very long time, and then I watched the movies, and I flipped back to Kirk.
Yeah. No, I think in the movies I definitely like Kirk better. In the actual series, I like Picard better.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd agree with you on that part.
All right, and then of course, once the whole ruse kind of reveals, Saavik is like, well, how did this thing happen? And literally Kirk flips it on Saavik's head. It's like, what does the book say? It's like, oh, that's right. If you're in open communication, you have to have countermeasures and ruses. And the fact that when they go up and she says to Spock, you lied. It's like, I exaggerated. And I think that's the first time I'm not so clear on my TOS, but I think that's the first time he was like, I didn't lie, I exaggerated a little bit.
Yeah, manipulated the truth, but
manipulated the truth.
Yeah, but that's a running thing with Saavik. And is Kim Cattrall playing Saavik in Undiscovered Country?
No.
Or is it a different?
What they did, and we'll get to that when we reach it. But just for information, like I said, there wasn't supposed to be a movie after this. That's why she was not signed.
Right.
So they brought in Robin, something, I don't remember her name. They brought in the new actress to do a Search for Spock. And she has like a very teeny tiny role in The Voyage Home. And then when they did The Undiscovered Country, it was supposed to be Saavik. But they couldn't get Kirstie Alley because at the time it was literally deep into Cheers, and they A, couldn't afford her, B, she was working like 18-hour days, and they couldn't even work around her schedule. And they didn't even call the girl, Robin, who did Saavik in the other two movies. They didn't even call her, and they just made a whole new character.
Lieutenant Valeris.
They said that Saavik was not even like, it was not in her nature to do what they did to Spock. Like, it wouldn't be in her character to go by the book and be like with the Federation at that sort of angle. It wouldn't work. So they just made a new character.
What I was getting at though is Lieutenant Valeris, Kim Cattrall's character in Undiscovered Country, has the same kind of situation where they're manipulating the truth in that. So there's a thing with the Vulcans through multiple movies where they don't outright lie, they just manipulate it.
Exactly. And it actually is in many different series. It actually comes up in Enterprise quite a bit with T'Pol, not because she lies, because the people like that are supposed to let's say go hand in hand and what do you call it? Make sure you do the right thing kind of Vulcans, that they're with the Federation, not the Federation, the Starfleet, the people who are in Starfleet. It's like, yeah, we're kind of guiding you into going out to the stars, just so you better listen to what we say. Those situations with T'Pol come in with like, oh, you lied, not lied. They have the whole mind meld episodes where they kind of explain mind meld as well. Right. So they go into the nebula and they fight. And the one thing that they brought up is the fact that Khan is of his time. It was supposed to be the 1990s eugenic wars, which is funny. Yeah. But they bring the fact that he doesn't think third dimensionally, which is odd because even like pilots think three dimensions, like up, down, and sideways, and all that
The
stuff.
Z-axis.
It
Yeah.
really didn't fit, but just to explain how Kirk is a little bit more superior, they have that thing where I'll have it on screen, where they follow him two-dimensionally, and then they just stop and go down, and then they come up behind the Reliant in order to grab him. Thank you, Robin Curtis. Thank you, Paul. Is the name of the actress.
Yep.
Right. So,
So basically,
when-
manipulates that he doesn't think with a Z-axis.
yes,
I mean,
exactly.
He thinks of driving like we do a car, going left, right, forward, backwards.
Exactly. And like I said, it really doesn't fit. It's another little tiny plot hole. But like I said, when this came out in 1982, people didn't even think about it. More now, we've got a little bit more of a sophisticated crowd when it comes to watching. That's why you got a lot of people doing nitpicks, including myself. I do nitpicks for movies that I enjoy. It's like, oh, this is a plot hole. Oh, this wouldn't work that way. But I still, in a movie that I enjoyed, I still enjoy the movie regardless. And this one as well. It's like, it's fine. It's not really something that kind of bothers me that much. It really does come to nitpicking. So they come up behind the Reliant, they shoot the Reliant down, but the Reliant does manage to hit back, and they still haven't repaired their warp drive. And of course, like I said, this is, to me, one of Ricardo's most, like, the best moments. His entire crew is dead. He tries to save his first officer. He lifts like this like giant fucking piece of metal to move it aside to talk to him. And he says, we would die for you. And he goes to this Genesis device and he starts activating it. And he literally talks about the lines of when Ahab is shooting the harpoons at Moby Dick. I think
From hell's heart, I stab at thee.
Yeah. It's straight from the book.
Yep.
Starts the Genesis device, and the Enterprise kind of sees, we indicate that something's going on, and they start to run away. And I want to get to the point where, generally speaking, in terms of the entire movie, Spock doesn't have a major role. Like, he has certain scenes here, but it's very much driven with Shatner in mind, with Kirk. And then we get to the point where it's like everything is going out. We know that we can't outrun this thing. It's going to create a massive explosion because, like, his son tells him, like, we can't make it. We need to be this far away. And then Spock has that decision where he kind of looks at everything. He calculates logically what needs to be done, turns around, leaves, and you see Kirk and his son looking at the stuff and the empty chair.
Yeah,
right?
Nobody notices him just walk into the
and
turbo
nobody
lift.
notices that he's gone. He goes down to the thing. Wait. Let me get to a specific point before he goes into the chamber. There we go. So that's the point where he shuts down McCoy, gives him the mind meld. You don't see him speak. It was later redubbed. He just talks. And in the search for Spock, there's a moment where they see the camera footage and they hear him talk. So he puts him down, does the mind meld, goes into the chamber, and everybody on the bridge at that time is really nervous. And it's like, Kirk is like, time. What time do we have? And Sulu's like, we don't have enough time. We don't have enough distance. And then suddenly Scotty is like, we have power. It's like, Sulu, just go. And Sulu's like off away. And he talks to Scotty, and it's like, Scotty, you're amazing. Thank you. We've done it, or you've
The
done it.
engines have full power. Bless you, Scotty, and
Yeah.
get out of here.
Yeah. And it's like, Captain, you better come down here. And he doesn't say anything else. And the scene is, he looks at everything. He looks at Spock's empty chair, and he realized something really bad happened, but he doesn't know why. He goes downstairs. He sees him in that chamber, and he's being pulled by both McCoy and Scotty. It's like, don't go in there. It would literally, you'll flood the compartment with radiation, and all of us will die. And
they made an important change here, because originally the director had McCoy saying, "He's dead, Jim." And they thought that would come off as too campy, so they actually switched lines with Scotty, and he said, "He's already dead."
Yeah, he's already dead.
Yeah. But it would have changed the whole scene and the whole feeling of the scene if they had McCoy's do the classic, "He's dead, Jim." And it just wouldn't have felt right. It would have been way too campy.
And for me, in that one little scene, you get to know a lot about Spock, and you get to know a lot of the relationship of Spock and McCoy. The whole the needs of the many are better than the needs of the few, or the one. That sort of thing is very impactful, because he actually mentions it just before he says that line. He mentions that, I never took the Kobayashi Maru test.
What did you think of my solution?
Yeah. It's like, what do you think of my solution? Because this is his solution to Kobayashi, to then like sacrifice yourself in order to save the crew, is the most logical thing ever.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it's the most logical thing ever. And then we come to the personal thing. It's like, I have
and shall always be your friend.
I'm stuck because I know this line by heart, and I still fuck it up.
Love this line. Yeah.
It's one of the best friends line ever. Like, you can compare it to any line. Like, what's that movie? The football movie. Come on, I've lost it. Rudy. It's not, we don't have the same lines, but it's sort of a lost my best friend kind of feel. This one is, to me, is much more impactful, just because of how things kind of turned around.
Well, it's kind of like the Saving Private Ryan line at the end. Am I a good man? That kind of feeling. I mean, it's one of those lines that, if it can give you the goosebumps, going up and down the arms, it hits. If you're a true fan of this franchise, that's a line that hits you every time.
To me, the line that hits is not actually this, because this for me is the whole setup for making me teary-eyed. Is they finish this, he's down, you can see him down, Kirk is looking at him, and then it kind of dissolves into the whole funeral scene.
Mm-hmm.
You have the full crew or whatever who could muster to just be standing there. Savick is there. All the friends are there. And he says, from all the people I've met, he was the most human. And that kind of gets me. Yeah. That gets me every single time. It's like, yes, we know he's half Vulcan, half human, but he's acting more Vulcan-esque. Because at the start of the movie, he's in Vulcan, actually. And at the start of the motion picture, he's in Vulcan, he's full regalia, trying to get rid of all of his emotions, and then he chooses to go back to Starfleet. And in this, it's more impactful because you get the other side of that equation, where he's being logical throughout this whole movie, and his final act is very Vulcan, but saying that line about the whole friendship thing kind of gets you the fact that yes, he was Vulcan, but he was human in nature rather than race.
And that's actually set up and foreshadowed with a line with Savick at the beginning of the movie. When she first meets Kirk, she tells Spock in Vulcan, "He's not what I expected." And Spock goes, "What did you expect?" And she said, or "What's different?" or something like that. And she said, he's much more human. And Spock says, "Well, nobody's perfect."
Nobody's perfect. Yes.
So they
Right.
set up that line coming later.
And we've got like two last scenes of the movie, but we'll have our next game. It is called Screen Fighter.
Round 1, fight.
Screen Fighter is where we take two movies, pit them together, and see which one is the best one. If there's no discernible difference between the two, both of them are good, both of them are bad, we fall into our criteria, which is Saturday evening, Friday evening, out with the girls, out with the boys, out with your significant other. Two movies in a vacuum. Which one will we pop in? And I will just do this and that and this and that. And bam. Chat participation is most welcome. Let me do this. And here we go. Bend It Like Beckham or Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo. Take
And
your
we're
pick.
just deciding which one we're going with.
And give me a short little reason why. Doesn't have to be long.
I would go with Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo, because I like comedies. I like Rob Schneider, and I don't really like women's sports movie things all that much, except for A League of Their Own.
Okay, which is arguably one of the best sports movies.
Yeah, regardless of women or
Regardless of race, of gender.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Deuce Bigelow because Bend It Like Beckham actually made Keira Knightley's career, and the other chick, which has a very odd and very Indian name. The Indian chick went on to do ER for a few seasons, and Keira Knightley was Keira Knightley.
The Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes. However, Deuce Bigelow is way funnier and way more interesting, to be absolutely fair. And just a Saturday evening, just watching a movie, I would definitely pop the Deuce.
Yeah.
Night of the Living Dead and Madigan. Actually, haven't seen Madigan, so we'll do this. There we go. Night of the Living Dead and Dr. Dolittle.
I'm not a huge fan of the horror genre.
Me neither.
They
That's
just
fine.
don't do anything for me. But I also don't care for the extremely campy comedies. So if I was going to have to pick, I'd probably go with the more classic of the two, The Night of the Living Dead.
All right. I love Eddie Murphy. I really, really do. But after he did, I think it was Nutty Professor was the first thing he did, which was like a comedy after. No, it was before Beverly Hills Cop 3, but it was during that time. And I liked it, but anything after that, I just couldn't stand him. I really couldn't.
Oh.
It's as soon as he lost that Eddie Murphy laugh, you know, that distinct laugh that he hides nowadays.
Yeah.
Not for me. I'm really not a big horror guy, let alone a zombie horror, but I would pick Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
The Sixth Sense or Rookie of the Year.
Seen them both. And at this point, because of the way The Sixth Sense, I mean, everybody already knows it. So
Yeah.
I don't tend to rewatch the twist ending movies. So I'd have to go with Rookie of the Year, even though Sixth Sense is probably a better movie.
Interesting. I'm going to go with The Sixth Sense because it is the second and only movie I like by M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong.
Yeah.
My
I like the
favorite movie
I
is
just
Breakable. It's
Yeah.
Hell, I'm not a comic book guy, but it's rewatchable, and I can definitely relate to the comic book esque, the comic book aspect of that movie.
Mhm.
Rookie of the Year, it's a sort of a. It looks like a real life, like Disney type movie, kind of a feel good kids movie, I would say. It's not,
Yeah.
it's just not for me.
I think it's probably more rewatchable for me.
Yeah, it's fine. Any pick is good pick. Spider-Man 2 or The Jarling Limit. I haven't seen this, so we'll switch.
I haven't seen that specific one, but Wes Anderson movies don't do it for me. The Royal Tenenbaums is about the only one I can stand.
End of Days or Spider-Man 2.
I think you got to go Spider-Man 2 here.
Yeah, we'll go with Spider-Man 2. Wolverine versus Sabretooth. This is a animated Marvel movie.
Hmm.
And Joe Dirt.
I've probably seen Wolverine versus Sabretooth because I tend to just pop on a whole bunch of the animated movies when they come out.
It's weird that
But
the animated movies by Marvel are way better sometimes than the real life stuff. This is 2014.
yeah,
This is past
so are
Disney.
the DC animated movies. They're much better
Yes,
than the DC
for
movies.
sure.
But in this case, I'm still going to go with Joe Dirt because Joe Dirt's a classic.
Yeah,
Love
for
Joe
me
Dirt.
too. Joe Dirt. Where's Klobby? He had to pull out ceremoniously. Thor, original Thor, or Home Alone 2, starring 1 minute of Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Well,
Yeah.
I still don't understand why they put it on John. It's just a throwaway fucking scene that most
Oh,
people
because it
don't
was
even
his
remember.
hotel that he's staying at.
Yeah, but still. Anyway, Home Alone 2 or Thor?
I'm probably going to go with Thor here, even though the comic book movies, this wasn't one of the best. I don't like rewatching the Home Alones. They were okay. I would watch them with my kids, but I wouldn't choose to watch Home Alone again right now.
Normally, for me, I would pick just about any movie instead of Thor.
Yeah.
However, I really don't like the Home Alone sequels at all. Like at all.
Yeah.
I never found Thor to be compelling until Ragnarok. I know it's a sacrilege, but again, I'm not a comic book guy, so it didn't destroy anything for me. The weakest point in Thor Ragnarok for me was the fact that Mark Ruffalo's in it and he's barely being Hulk. That's the only thing that disturbed me. But I loved the 80s feel of it. But the original Thor, I really didn't like. But
See, I
I
kind of
will
like the
go with
original
Thor.
Thor because the comedy notes in it made more sense of it being stuff like he doesn't understand Earth. I didn't like Ragnarok because it got so campy comedy type stuff. So,
All right.
but yeah,
With our last pair, Lucas or Tarantino?
two good movies.
Two great movies.
I'm not typically a huge Tarantino fan. I've seen both of the movies. I would go with Pulp Fiction though on this one. There's just so many classic scenes and classic lines out of it that I'd have to go with it.
Yeah, it's a tough one on the old chat. For me,
Yeah.
technically it's a no-brainer. It is Pulp Fiction. It is so fantastic. I love American Graffiti. It's really good. It catches a sort of a moment in time, especially coming from George Lucas. And Harrison Ford's in it, and loads of like actors of that era are really good in it, and they're capturing sort of that 50s feel. Pulp Fiction is above and beyond a lot of movies that you could consider. What? You choose that over that? Yeah. Pulp Fiction is like my number 2 movie of all time. So it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's end everything with the aftermath. So one of the things that we do have with this is after the funeral scene is the fact that Kirk has his talk with David. Let me
Yep.
just share my
Again,
screen.
about the Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah. Discussing how why he cheated, how he cheated, why he doesn't. It sort of Kirk gives his set of values to David, and seems like David doesn't really agree, but he kind of understands the fact that they're estranged and they have that sort of connection because of a tragedy. Kind of sets up the search for Spock, but it wasn't. They didn't know it was setting up at the time. That's the whole thing, and
Yeah.
him having that reconnection makes David's death a lot more impactful in the third movie, which is great because otherwise it would be just the estranged son that you didn't even really talk to, you haven't had that reconnection to, so it kind of feels weird that he's because when David died, when he learns that David died, he literally falls and it's like you
Yeah.
killed my son.
Well, and it becomes the basis for a good portion of Undiscovered Country.
And yes, as well. And then we had that torpedo launch and Kirk looking at this new planet as sort of a one thing died, but another thing got created. And at that point, they didn't. The whole genesis, the whole point of David not sabotaging, but using illegal stuff, illegal matter to create Genesis. They didn't even thought of that angle at all. So it's all about death and not resurrection, but death and rebirth of something new.
Yeah.
And kind of looks to the future and looking towards saying goodbye to an old friend and knowing that he is not he's not seeding that planet with sort of extra life, but he's putting him to rest in this new thing that got created, not because of him, but despite of his sacrifice. We're here to look at it as this new thing.
Yeah. This was the only other place in the movie where some of it didn't quite add up to me. Like you were saying earlier, you can forgive it in movies that you like, but I mean, the Genesis bomb exploded in the nebula.
Yes.
I mean,
and suddenly
it just happened to be in the nebula. You have a new star and a planet formed, and it just happens to be in the M range so that everything can live on this planet. So there was no point in them searching for a planet the whole time if right there they could have just detonated it in the nebula. So some of it kind of falls apart there, but I choose to ignore it. But yeah, it's the Genesis planet doesn't really work.
For me, it was a nitpick not from the first viewing because I was like young, I was 10 or 9, but in later on views, like where's that star coming from? Why is it really doesn't fit, but fine, I'll let go because I just saw one of the greatest scenes in Star Trek history and in movie history. One of the best death scenes in history. So fuck it. The story, that's how you know the story was so strong throughout the movie that those little nitpicks, those little plot holes really doesn't bother you because you've just had a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I just had to point it out because it's always kind of bothered me just enough to always notice it. It's like, well, I still don't get that, but sure. But yeah, it's still such a good movie that it doesn't really matter.
All right. And that kind of brings us to the wrap up. Yeah, Tom, I've seen your message, but yeah, we're just wrapping up. To me, and we'll have this on screen for a little bit. To me, the fact that they showed the torpedo never really lit anything in my mind. It's like, oh, he's alive. Or I went back and watched it again. Did the torpedo move at one point? It didn't, but people thought it did. really didn't do anything for me. Really didn't give me any hint to see the final resting place. Yes, it's like, oh, Spock is buried in this ceremoniously buried in this planet that got rebuilt.
Yeah.
Yes, Tom, I know it's a reshoot. I know. It's a full-on reshoot because it went just very, very poorly, and they added in the mind meld. In terms of the whole movie, for me, it was for a very long time my favorite movie of all time. Again, coming back to Star Trek, to the movies, specifically for the movies in the past couple of years, I've actually changed my mind. I like the Undiscovered Country more. I like the ending in Undiscovered. I like the sort of the whole ending and how they send them off. I like that all time, one of the favorite endings of any sort of series of movies,
Yeah.
even back then. But on the whole, the movie itself, I'm going back and forth because there's things here I love, like that death scene, and there's things I love about the whole kind of plot of Undiscovered Country. So
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards 6 now, even though I can fully admit that this one is the best one.
Yeah, it's like a 1A, 1B. I would have said Wrath of Khan for a long time too, but Undiscovered Country, I actually did see that one in theaters. I think that's the only one I saw in theaters, and I love the interplay between the characters in that one. Uh, General Chang is a lot like Khan and how he's constantly quoting Old Earth. Well,
Yeah,
he says it was original Klingon, but Shakespeare, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
It
it's Shakespeare.
it's another poetic villain, that kind of thing. So, and yeah, even just the last 20-30 minutes of Undiscovered Country, I
Is
love the way
fucking
they did that.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
get to that because you're coming on to actually do this with us.
yeah, that was the one I
With the
was originally doing with you. Yeah, so but
yeah,
yeah,
but
Wrath of Khan, I mean, emotionally, I think it's the best of the movies. Um, I just
because
happen to
that's
like Undiscovered Country a little bit more.
like I said, the impact of what just happened. It's Spock. B, it's the whole interaction with Kirk. That's what that it's just sitting. It's literally sitting here when you're watching it. It's like I really want to, and I love Khan as a villain. He's great. And like I said, there's many parallels between the two. It's Nicholas Myers coming back to do like one more. So he likes his villain being very poetic, very Shakespearean-esque, wherein
Yep,
General Chang is literal Shakespeare, and here is
Moby
Ahab from
Dick.
Moby Dick. But it's still on sort of on the same level. And they, other than that, they don't have any, other than being that villain being sort of parallel, there's not a lot of parallels there. There's a lot more development and story driven things going on there, rather than
Yeah,
here where it's straight up just a vengeance story.
revenge. Yeah,
Or yeah, it's trying to get one over on each other. And it literally started in one episode in TOS.
yeah. The only thing I'd say about Wrath of Khan that still something that kind of bothers me is I still think they did Khan a little bit dirty because I
Really?
mean they made him almost anti-Spock. He's supposed to be supreme intellect. I mean, they were genetically bred to be much smarter than the average human. And yet the whole movie he does not use his brains at all. He uses emotion the whole time. He's the complete opposite of Spock in that he is constantly just dead set on revenge. He does not have any real use of his superior intellect except to, sort of trick people into doing what he wants. But really, all it was, setting some bait out and using a bug that crawls in your ear to do it. If he didn't have that, he wasn't going to get, Chekhov to do anything. And
Yeah.
his plan's dead right there. So, I mean, even his first Joachim, the guy that's, his second,
Yeah.
guy's constantly like dude, we don't have to do any of this. We've got
Yeah,
Genesis. We could just
yeah, we
fly
had
off and do whatever. And at no point does the superior intellect, which is what Joachim says to him, yours is the superior intellect. That never comes into play with Khan. So he was a great villain, but I think they kind of did him dirty to what he's supposed to be from,
one
his
of the
background.
one of the things that I did throughout my research is looking back at what we know about the eugenics war, what they kind of said throughout the years. And one of the things that came up, and like I said, it's like a fan theory, so take it for what it will, is the fact that the eugenics wars didn't quite make it. They didn't win the eugenics wars because of the fact that they were so smart. They got egotistical, and their ego, so their emotions got in their way, and that's how they lost. That's how they captured Khan originally, because they were trying to be so overthinking things and trying to one up each other in terms of their own the enhanced guys. So their egos got in their way, and that's how they got them to lose, basically.
So they've kind of gone back and fan fiction retcon that it's his weakness is his ego.
Yeah, why would superior intellect fall to the lowly humans originally? How come they got into the original Botany Bay? Because they were so, oh, I'm so great, I'm so magnanimous. The ego, they got an inflated ego, and that's what the thing that dropped him at the end.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, fan theory. Anyway, that is it for Wrath of Khan. Next week, Search for Spock with currently no guest. However, Devil Made Me Do It from the Legion of Memers is coming. Forgot. Cool. And of course, my oh my God. Talking too much. My good co-host is coming back to save me and not having this voice. Nice. Thank you, Brahma, for joining us. And you will join us in about a couple of weeks when we do The Undiscovered Country as well, which is fun because, like I said, so go follow Brahma on Twitter. You can follow him there, right there. The link, the @ is right there, Mr. Brahma Bull. On Rumble and on YouTube, links are in the description down below. If you want to interact with me, with my scary ass voice, you can go to Twitter @ Mephisto. You can go to Mephisto @ Mephisto79 on Instagram if you don't like Twitter, which I understandably. And of course, email the show at the Reel McCoy podcast @gmail.com. That is it. Go watch Star Trek: The Search for Spock. Trust me, it's not as bad as you think. Because usually they say that
review.
1, 3, and 5 are bad, and 2, 4, and 6 are good. Not really. Not really. It is way better than you think. And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, see ya. You're still here? It's over. Go home.